What if Tighnari ended up changing his mind, and he chose to stay at the Sumeru Akademiya? What will happen? How much will he improve the scholar's plan in turning the Akasha into a dream harvesting machine? And what will happen to Sweet Kale with his master gone? Let's find out. The story begins with a young Tighnari who was still studying at the Sumeru Akademiya. He was at an academic conference when he noticed that one speaker spoke of things that he knew to be untrue. He reluctantly interjected the researcher, and to his surprise, it turned out that Tighnari had done the right thing, and the speaker accepted his corrections earnestly. Other students would also speak in their turn, leading to new topics being discussed at the conference. Once the whole incident was over, he thought it was a fortunate and joyous thing that those who studied alongside him also gave the topic the knowledge and seriousness it deserved. What he didn't expect, though, is something much more fortunate and joyous to happen to him. When the meeting ended, he noticed that he had been blessed by, lo and behold, a dendrovision. Tighnari began reading books on how visions work, and learns from a famous scholar that they are formed when a person's ambition reaches a certain strength, and the gods look upon them with favor. In other words, a person's vision represents their ambition. He then hypothesized that his ambition stems from the Akademiya, as he received it when he was at their conference. The sages took advantage of his thinking, and assures him that his ambition is the Akademiya. They threaten that if he ever chooses to leave, he will lose his vision and ambition. The Dendro user, none the wiser, blindly trusts their judgment, and vows to always be loyal to the Akademiya, as his vision was basically gifted by them, still having a very positive perception of the school. Years have passed since then, and Tighnari is now seeing the bad side of the Akademiya. He started arguing with other researchers, as he thinks that life is not an consumable commodity, and knowledge should not be wielded like a scepter, something that they disagree with. The students would also rather debate about their ideas on the best way to help the forest, rather than actually doing something to help change the forest for the better. His instincts told him to abandon Sumeru Akademiya and join the Forest Watchers, so he can actually help in a practical manner, but remembering his vows, and fearing the loss of his ambition, he stayed. Will that decision do more harm than good? Well, let's speculate on what might happen next with his absence. First of all, Kale would have one less friend, the saddest thing ever. I would say she would be the most badly impacted by his absence, as she will no longer have a master to guide her. She might not realize on how much she actually enjoys being a forest ranger, and not end up knowing about her ambition. She potentially might be already eliminated without Tighnari's help. As far as I know, he's the only one who is knowledgeable enough in the forest rangers to know the treatment for Elizar, although it's not completely permanent. Without his help and reminders, her illness might have already turned too lethal, resulting in her being eliminated. Most likely, she would still not know how to read and write, as chances are that her replacement teacher would not be as patient and gentle as Tighnari. A different master might also result in her past trauma getting worse, putting too much pressure on herself. She might turn quiet and distant due to this, the complete opposite of the happy and outgoing Kale we know. It's not just her that will be badly impacted, but also the entirety of the Avidya forest, and the Forest Watchers, who were supposed to protect it. Most of the rangers would most likely be already gone, due to them accidentally eating a poisonous mushroom, or accidentally getting lost in the forest, never to be found. The group will be very chaotic, and not as productive as it can be. According to him, the organization lacked rational structure, and instructions with any measure of scientific rigor. It lacked a forest patrol log, and they just randomly assigned tasks to people, not handing them according to the person's strength. They also lacked knowledge about the different types of plants and animals in the forest, and the history of the nature they preserved. All of those problems Tighnari had fixed, so with him gone, the forest patrols would not nearly be as efficient, resulting in more deaths. For the last, and most likely be the most badly affected, will be the Avidya forest. The withering zones would grow rampant, with no one there to go clear them. The withering is a phenomenon which corrodes an area with decay and desolation in Sumeru. For a person to go clear a withering zone, they would need a vision, and destroy the tumor that's releasing the corrosive power. The problem is that almost all of the forest rangers don't have visions, so they can't do anything to help stop it. If someone were to go in without a vision, they wouldn't be able to resist its decaying corrosions, receiving irreversible damage to their body. Even still, they most likely not know how to deactivate it, lacking the knowledge and training, making their sacrifice be in vain. It was Tighnari's duty to go clear all of the withering zones, and unlike all of the other things I mentioned, this role cannot be easily substituted, needing a vision and a good heart to willingly help them. So, rest in peace, Avidya Forest, I guess. But it's not all bad, right? If he ever chose to stay at the Sumeru Akademiya, well, maybe. But the positive side of things, as a researcher of the Akademiya put it, Tighnari's guidance and presence in the Sumeru city is pivotal in finding the cure for Airminso. So the withering zones I talked about earlier would entirely be gone, making it be the better option for the forest if he chose to stay. That's really the only positive thing I can think of, but as for the negatives, I thought of something that is much, much worse that can potentially happen to Sumeru. During the sage's visit, he mentioned on how they need Tighnari for a certain project, but didn't mention what it was about. He declined the offer, of course, but if he didn't, or couldn't, what will end up happening? This is just speculation, but I personally think that the project they discussed was the dream harvesting operation that the Traveler tackled in the Archon quest. With the Dendro users' help, the scholars could have greatly improved their plan and made it much harder to break the cycle. Maybe with his knowledge, they could have expanded the area to not just be inside the Sumeru city. Perhaps Tighnari can think of a way so that Daye's muscle memory doesn't return after each cycle, or place himself in a dream to distract the Traveler. This is all just major speculation, as I might be overestimating his abilities, but it is still a scary possibility. Or maybe the opposite might happen, and instead of him helping their plan, he stops it and exposes them instead. Being in the Akademiya, Tighnari might also go too far and lose control in his pursuit of knowledge, as that doesn't seem to be a very uncommon occurrence. The positive of that could also be true, and he ends up helping reshape the ideals of the school. He changes their perspective to not place themselves above other life forms, and to help in a more practical manner. Oh, and how can I forget to mention, he would be involved in a lot more group photos, and his fluffy, delicate ears would hurt from all the noises in the city. Well, that is what I personally think would happen if Tighnari chose to stay at the Akademiya instead of being a forest ranger. What are your guys' thoughts? Which parts do you agree and disagree with? Comment down below. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribe, and like if you ended up enjoying this video, as I put a lot of effort into it.